Hey folks, Tim Newman with Soft Light Studios bringing you another daily assignment. Today's assignment is for July 2nd, 2019. Our assignment today is to capture a panning image. And capturing a panning image involves identifying a subject in a scene, tracking it through the scene by following it with the camera, most likely using a slower than normal shutter speed. Now that shutter speed will be directly relational to the speed of the subject in the scene. The faster the subject, the faster the shutter speed. The slower the subject, likely a slower shutter speed. You'll have to play with shutter speed a little bit to get used to this. Now, conveying motion is done by freezing the subject as you track it through the scene, but having the background be blurred by the movement of the camera following the subject. Ideally, if parts of the subject are moving, keeping the movement in those moving parts really conveys motion in the best possible way. So your job is to go out and find a subject and capture a compelling panning image of that subject. Let's take a look at a couple of sample pictures. So this first picture here is taken at an IndyCar race, and at this IndyCar race we've identified a curve where the cars move through at a pretty decent arc from our position where we're standing. And this image right here was taken at 1/8 of a second as its shutter speed. And we're literally tracking the car through the corner, allowing the background to blur, but staying locked on the car so that the car is sharp in the frame. But you'll notice that the wheels on the car are still moving in this frame, conveying motion with this car. Let's take a look at our second sample image here. Here's another IndyCar image. Not only are we doing the same thing here where we're blurring the background and we're blurring the foreground, we have the wheels moving on the car, but the rest of the car in the frame is tack sharp. You'll also notice that in this frame, we have taken advantage, like we did in the first sample frame, of some diagonal lining in the frame to give us the most possible movement for this motion. All right, let's talk about some of the elements of design that we're focusing on here. Our elements of design are certainly lines in the image and leading lines in the frame that draw the viewer's eye, in this case, in both of these frames, diagonally through the image. Depth of field is an important concept here. And really, as you're thinking about depth of field, you want your depth of field to be relatively narrow, but you're really thinking about midfield focus. If you think of the two sample frames that you've had so far, the foreground is out of focus and the background is out of focus. Now, the blurring obviously helps that, but using that midfield focus really compounds that effect and makes it stand out even more. Let's take a look at a few more sample images here. Here's another IndyCar image. And again, you can see we have the foreground out of focus and blurry, background out of focus and blurry, midfield focus, tack sharp, and the wheels moving on the car. Again, that diagonal framing through the frame. Now here's one that's a little bit different. It's a bicycle rider, obviously, and we're using blurring here by virtue of the panning of this rider through the scene to make the background look all blurred and fuzzy. But you'll also notice that the spokes on the wheels here are blurred as well, indicating movement not only in the background, but in the bike as well. So it's important to remember that even though you have a subject and you want to have some of that subject to be sharp, some of that subject can still move, and it's up to you to find the appropriate shutter speed to make that happen. Got one last image to take a look at, one that was nabbed over in Europe. Really love the bright, vibrant colors here. The car is relatively sharp, we can sustain a little bit of fuzziness in the subject because the rest of the fuzziness in the background really amplifies what we're trying to accomplish in the scene. Here, we're really working that rule of thirds and the way the scene is divided up. There's some really tremendous color sets going on in here. And again, we're kind of focusing on that middle field focus. Sharp image of the car, the subject itself, but a little bit of blur in the wheels. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up with a couple of more thoughts here. One is, what are our rules of composition here? Well, don't forget rule of thirds. Anytime you can frame the image up that way, you really have a winner there. Put interest points at intersection points. Remember your point of view. Almost every one of these images that you've looked at, we are on level with, viewing directly the side of that subject that we are tracking through that scene. And wherever we can, let's try to really keep an eye on geometric balance and work that into the scene. All right, one last slide. These are the rules for formatting this image. The naming standard that we use, you've seen this before in our previous slides. If you haven't, go take a look at daily assignments for July 1st. We talk about that in more detail. The URL is down here at the bottom where you're going to upload it. And again, rather than typing this URL, make sure you look for it down in the description below the video. You can click on it right there and get to it directly if you would like to have your image considered for our potential semi-monthly image critique that we do. All right, we're out of here. Remember, learning equals skills. Practice equals mastery. We'll see you out there.